Hi everyone, it's Angela from Happy Dotting Company. You know, I often get asked if Happy Dotting Company moulds can be used with resin. And I've been doing some experimenting recently, and so I want to do a demonstration of how to use with resin. So essentially the answer is yes, they can be used with resin. However, there are some considerations. And what this actually is to do with is that if you want resin to come out nice and transparent and shiny and glossy, then the mould that you use needs to have an interior that is shiny and glossy as well. Now, the interior of our moulds is matte, and that is how it will actually come out of the mould. But there is a solution to this. So I'm going to take you through the process now and demonstrate what to do. So the first thing I wanted to say about resin is, well, firstly, I am not an expert, so I am learning as well. However, I will share with you what I have learnt. So there are different types of resin. The one I'm using today is epoxy casting resin, and I got it from a shop called Barnes. Now, I live in Australia, in Brisbane, and I get my resin from there, or at least I got this resin from there. Now, I'm going to be using another type of resin as well, and I'll go into that in a moment. However, this resin is particularly designed for deep casting. You can see by the pictures here that they're actually deep casts with the pictures, with the type of casting you want to do. And that's really important because it makes a difference as to how easily or not it releases the bubbles and what the resin is going to be used for. I'm going to be doing a few applications of the resin. So I'm going to be doing the first pour, then I'm going to be inserting a few things into the resin, then I'm going to do a second pour, then I'm actually going to take the entire casting out of the mould, and I'll be able to show you what it looks like. And then I'm going to do a final coat of another type of resin. Now, the other type of resin I'm going to use is actually art resin. So this is from artresin.com, and this is the one that I actually have most of experience with, because up till recently I've only ever had to, or wanted to, actually coat the art that I've done. So this is really, in my mind at least, it's just sort of like for adding that lovely glassy coat to things. But if you're looking for deep casting resin, then you need to think about, you know, whether it's suitable. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to use a mold release spray. Now, you may not strictly need to do this, however, it depends on the mold you're using as well. Some can be tricky to get out. So I don't recommend that you need to do this when casting with, you know, gypsum and other things that I've used in other demonstrations, but we're talking about resin today in particular. Now, this again is really important. Don't just use any mold release spray. This one I've found is actually paintable. Now, if you use one that's not paintable, the problem is you're not going to be able to get the last coat of resin to adhere. So this is one that I've found works and that I do recommend. So I'm just going to put just a little spray in there and leave that. So that's the first thing I've done. You can't even see it in there really. It's just a very, very fine mist. Now what I'm going to do is I've already got the resin ready in different parts. This one is using 2 parts of this one to 1 part of this one, and I've already measured them out here. So I'm actually going to just pour both of them in here, and then give them a really good mix. I just want to add that different resins have different setting times or curing times, so it's really important to follow the directions that come with the particular type of resin that you're using. It does have lots of bubbles in it, but the bubbles in this particular resin will work their way to the top, and it takes an entire 24 to 48 hours to cure. So it probably depends on how much you're using at any one time, and as well as the temperature of where you are. So I'm going to be pouring this in at the moment, and then I'm going to be pausing, and then I'll be coming back to do more with this video. Now I am actually pouring it from some height, as you can see, and I'm doing that deliberately because I know in one video that I watched they said that this may be helpful in reducing the amount of bubbles that end up in the cast. So there we go. That is the first layer that's now going to just be setting. So I'll see you soon. So they've basically sunk so that they are sitting now at the top of the first layer but at the bottom of the second layer, if that makes sense. So now I'm just going to completely fill up the rest of this mould. This is mould 3, by the way, if you're wondering what size it is that I'm using of our range. And it's actually the smallest mould that we have in this round shape. And all of our round shapes actually have a very tiny centre dot in the middle, and that's for when you're doing mandala art and art that you want to know where the centre is. It gives you a clue as to where to start. So there you go. I can see that it's still it's moving. There's some bubbles at the top that are just sort of starting to rise up and pop. It's probably a bit far away for you to see, but anyway, I will let this set for another 24 hours or so, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I demold it. Okay, back again. It's now been about 48 hours since I poured this and it's set, and you can see on top there how beautiful and clear it is. So I'm going to get it out of its mould now and show you what it looks like on the other side. Just going to peel it back over the edge. And as you can see, it does come away quite nicely. Okay, so there you go. So you can now see clearly what I'm talking about. It is not clear and transparent. It's nice and smooth. There is the little dot in the middle that because that's actually built into the moulds for when you do these using mandala art. But as you can see, it's not particularly clear. You can see how clear it is on this side because that's the side we poured on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give this a wash with just some, regular dishwashing detergent, and then I'm going to let it dry very well. And then I will show you the next step as to how to make it nice and clear and transparent with using just a very thin coat of resin as well. So I'm back again. Now it's been a while and I've washed this with some soapy water and let it thoroughly dry, and I'll just show you what else I've got here. Is just a homemade stand that I made where I can put things on whilst I'm resining, and it's sort of, you do still get spots of where the resin can adhere, but you know, they're fairly minimum. So I'm just going to be using this. I do have a YouTube about making this if you wanted to see it. It's on my YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to be applying the last coat, and it's a very thin coat. And this time I'm going to be using art resin, and this is from artresin.com. And this is specifically designed sort of more just for a thin coat. It's not designed for deep casting. And that's part of what I was saying before is, you know, make sure you use the right resin that's fit for purpose. So I've been stirring this for about 3 minutes and I'm nearly done. All right, so I'm just basically going to be massaging this over the stone. And you can already see that it's actually just getting so much more clear there. And we just want to basically cover it. I'm going to be turning it over. I don't need to do the bottom because, as you can see, it's all beautifully clear there. Just use a little bit more. Just making sure that I cover it all and massaging it all over. Nearly done. Okay, I think I've got it all. That looks good. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this down there. Now, as you can see, the surface is a little uneven, but I'm just going to give it just a quick blast with my chef's torch, and this helps get the bubbles out, but it also tends to thin the resin so that it will be nice and smooth as well. But you don't want to do this for too long. It's only a very quick going over. You can actually scald resin. Okay, so that now is going to take about 24 hours to cure, and then I'll show it again to you when it's cured. One thing I want to tell you about the resin though that I have experimented with, you may already know that Happy Dotting Company, we do a range of moulds, including a couple of tea light moulds. And our tea light moulds are very popular. People absolutely love them. However, I would not particularly recommend them for casting with resin. And the reason for that is I deliberately tried to set fire to some resin that I had used in a tea light mould that was used for deep casting. And it wasn't flammable like a piece of paper or something. But after a while, I was able to set fire to it. So I don't recommend that you use tea light moulds for tea light using deep casting resin, because essentially they are flammable and that is a fire hazard. So I'll see you after this is cured. Okay, so I'm back now and I just want to show you the results. This has been curing for just over 24 hours. As you can see, it's beautifully glossy and clear. You see the details there?